another episode of the Knitting Jungle podcast. My name is Sarah, in case you're new here, and thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I live right outside Boston, Massachusetts, and this is a YouTube channel where I like to talk about everything that I've been knitting on recently. I also like to do machine knitting, a little bit of crochet, and in the spring and summer I also like to throw some sewing projects in there. The first day of spring is right around the corner, and while it's still really chilly here in Massachusetts, I'm already getting excited to knit on colors and spring and summer garments, which you'll see reflected in the projects that I'll be sharing today. To welcome in the spring mood, I'm wearing one of my favorite sweaters that I knit last year. This is called the Gerda Sweater by Agio Knit, and it's in this beautiful, very light ballerina pink color. And it's knit with 3 different strands. 2 of the strands are Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. I think it's called Cotton Merino, and it's in the colorway Ballerina. And then the 3rd strand is a lace weight alpaca yarn that is in a white color. And I wanted to mix the light pink with a little bit of white to make the pink an even lighter color. So I don't know, you can't really tell that there are white strands in there, but the overall effect is just this really beautiful light pink. And I really love this design. It's kind of checkerboards here, and then there are cables that go all the way down the sleeve, and also here at the raglan area. These go all the way down, and I knit this one pretty long. It goes all the way past my hips, and I think it's just a really cozy sweater that's also pretty lightweight and drapey, since it has a lot of cotton, and then the alpaca I find a little bit drapier than just a straight up wool sweater. So I even wore this last summer, like at night or on the beach on a windy day, and this is just one of my favorite knits of all time, and I highly recommend you to check out the pattern. It's a raglan type of sweater that's knit from the top down, and the only problem is that while the beginning part of the pattern is charted, it's up to you to extrapolate how to make all of these increases while staying in pattern. So I wouldn't say it's a beginner pattern necessarily, but if you can get there, then it's well worth it. I've also talked a lot about this project in one of my previous episodes, so I'll link all that below in case you're interested. If you caught my last episode, you saw that I had already begun this project, and I was maybe about this much of the way done with it. But since then, this has been one of the projects that I've been working on the most. Definitely a couple hours, almost every day if I can. And I've done a lot to this. It's wow, looks so good on camera. So one of my goals for this year was to do a lot of color work, because that's my favorite thing to do, especially on teeny little needles. So I'm definitely fulfilling some of my New Year's knitting resolutions with this one. Anyways, this is the 1988 cardigan by Hannah Kim, and this is one of the best written patterns I've seen in a long time. It has the best charts I've ever seen. Like, everything is fully charted, and then there's also text explanation, so if the text doesn't make sense, it's fully explained in the charts. And the diagrams are just so clear. The instructions are perfectly organized. Like, the formatting of the pattern is really, really clear and beautifully done, and all of that really means a lot to me when I'm paying a certain amount, like maybe $10 for a pattern. You can just tell so much work went into this pattern. And also what I love is every size has its own file, so that way you're not trying to go through all, you know how all the different stitches for the different sizes are in parentheses sometimes? Well, you don't have to worry about that and getting confused and looking at the wrong number, because each size has its own PDF file, which I really, really like. So I'm making the 2nd size in this. I think maybe it's called the size medium. And this one is supposed to give a finished circumference of 44 inches. And the smallest size is also pretty big. The finished circumference of the smallest size is 39.5 inches. So it's definitely meant to be a little bit oversized. And it does come in 5 sizes, with the largest sized finished circumference is 57.5 inches. I'm knitting this on 3mm needles, and the yarn I'm using is a Scottish merino called Uist wool, and the base is called Canach. And I'm using 4 different colors, but there are 2 main colors and then 2 accent colors. So the first main color is this very dark brown color, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the word for this, but I think it's break. And then the second color, the second main color, is this kind of light brown taupe type of color, and that one's called Corca. And then, oh no, there's 3 accent colors, which are this red, white, and then up here is a pink. And for those 3 accent colors, you only need about 25 grams of a fingering weight yarn for that, so I've just been using some random stash yarns for those. For the pink, I'm actually getting a little worried. So all I have left to do is finish this sleeve. So I've got like maybe 3 more rounds that are, or no, maybe 9 more rounds that are going to use pink, and I have this much of the pink left. So I'm a little bit scared. Definitely yarn chicken here. I think there's a 50% chance it'll be fine. Otherwise, I'll probably just substitute in white instead of pink. I think that'll be okay. So the original pattern for this is made in Biche 8 Bouche Les Petites Lambs wool, which is a light fingering weight yarn. I've used, actually this is I believe this is the Biche 8 Bouche Les Petites Lambs wool, and you can see it's almost like a lace weight. It's very, very thin. And I have knit a Colorwork vest with the Biche 8 Bouche yarn, and it was pretty thin and drapey and lightweight looking, but in the pictures the cardigan doesn't look that thin, so I don't know if it's just a trick of the camera or maybe I'm misremembering. But anyways, that's what she did her sample in, and it looks beautiful. There are at least 80 projects on Ravelry, and this fit looks good on everyone. And so many people have come up with the most beautiful colorways, and I already want to make another one of this with a light, like oatmeal type of background with maybe some pink and green in there, which are my favorite colors. And I saw a beautiful red sweater, a green one, blue. Yeah, I recommend you check out the Ravelry if you just want to see some beautiful works of art. And let me talk about the construction a little bit, because this is super interesting and I've never seen a construction like this. So the final fit of this is a cardigan with a pretty generous neckline. Like, it's not a low scoop, but it's definitely not up here like a regular crew neck. It's like something more like this. And how she achieves that is you start working flat for like maybe just a couple of rows, maybe 5 or 6 rows. So you do have to do just right here, just this 1 inch of color work flat. But as you can see, it's pretty simple flat color work because it's just alternating 2 colors. There's a little bit of short row shaping here, you can see. And then after that, you make cast on some steek stitches, and then you start knitting in a very small round circumference. And when I was doing this, I was so confused about, I wasn't confused with the pattern, I just trusted and went with it, but I was kind of like, wow, this neckline looks like it's going to be really, really small. But then you do a first initial round of cutting open steeks right here, 2 at the shoulder and 1 in the center front. And then those steek areas become part of the neckline. So it was kind of, so like if this was the final neckline, I was knitting in the round like this. Like pretend that was a small circumference. Then you cut this open, and then suddenly these sections they go out here. And then you cast on more stitches for the remainder of the front neckline to make the full width, properly fit a nice loose crew neck type of fit. I don't know if that made sense. I did take a little video of this happening, and maybe you can understand what that is, but I just thought that was such a clever way to make a nice open neckline while still knitting color work in the round as much as possible. Then, once you have reached the final depth of the neckline, you cast on your second set of steek stitches, which is just going to be at the center front, just like a regular steeked cardigan will be. And as you can see, I have finished the body and cut open that center steek. And that was easy. I just like to reinforce the steek lines with my sewing machine, just sew 2 vertical lines and then cut in the middle of the 2 sewn lines on the sewing machine, and I've never had a problem with it coming apart when I do that. And on one side, I've done one of the button bands, the one that has the buttons, not the buttonholes, and then I sewed on one button just because I wanted to see what it was gonna look like. I went for this little, I think this is a recycled cotton button. I think it's made, I don't know how they do that, but it has little tweedy speckles in it, just like this US wool. See, this is the darkest color, and it has a beautiful tweed effect when you see it all by itself. I guess in the Colorwork, the tweed stuff doesn't really show up, but here you can see it. And this is pretty soft merino. It's not like a cashmere feeling merino, but it's definitely not a rough merino like knitting for Olive, which I find kind of rough, especially if it's like a red or orange kind of shade. And then, okay, so here's the inside of the button band. So here you can see the steeked seam allowance thing, just kind of sitting there. And then what she has you do to finish the steeks is she wants you to roll in the steek on itself, like kind of tuck it in so that none of the frayed edges are sewing, and then just whip stitch that down. So I did test that over here. Hopefully you can see this chunky little guy. This is just the steeked section that I rolled it on itself and just sewed down right here. I just did it right here to see how bulky that was going to be. And then over here, I did not sew it down yet. So just my little test section to see if I wanted to do the roll and sew, or if I wanted to use some of that nice Norwegian ribbon tape and just kind of sew the tape over the raw edges there. I've done that in one of my other steeked cardigans, and I also like that method. So what I really need to do, I think, is just steam block this area to just see how flat I can get it and see how I like the finished product. But right now, from the front, it looks great. You don't really notice that bulk at all. And since this is a double knit button band, it's already really thick, so it kind of, it's not just like a thick steeked lump and then a really thin button band. It's a nice thick button band, so I think this would be a perfectly good way to finish the button band and the steeked edges. Speaking of the button band, the double knit button band, that's one of my favorite ways to do a button band, because if you don't know what double knitting is, it's making 2 sides of the fabric at one time, and there's like a hollow gap space in the middle. So if you kind of pull apart this button band, you can see it's actually hollow, like it's double-sided, but it's knit at the exact same time, and all you have to do is slip stitches to make that happen. And it's not very hard, but it is very time consuming. I think this one button band took me like 3 days. I actually have some stitch markers in here that show how much I got done in 30 minutes, because I was trying to calculate how long this was gonna take me. But it was several hours, but I think it's worth it. It's a really nice, sturdy button band because of the 2 layers. Since last time, I have also finished the neckline. It's not steam blocked or anything, so it's kind of rolling up a little bit, but this is just a 1x-ribbed neckline. And this yarn has no stitch definition at all, so it just looks like plain fabric here, which is fine with me. I think for the neckline, I omitted the final 2 rows because I wanted it to sit even lower. So if it was 2 rows more, then it would close in more on itself like this. So I just thought this looked good enough, and then I finished it there. And then, so also since the last episode, I finished the body, and that went really well. I just love how long this project is taking, because it is on the tiny needles, and the colorwork pattern is really fun. Like, it's different every round, but it's not very hard, so you can easily memorize each round, like 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, like that. Like you can just easily memorize it each round. And then I don't really even need the chart anymore because now I can just look at the previous rows to see what's coming up. So that's nice. It's like enough thinking, but not too much thinking. Okay, I think I forgot to mention this because I just got a little too carried away. But one of my favorite things about this pattern is the set-in sleeve shape, which I find the most flattering for me. And so it kind of just sits right here and it fits so well. And if you look at everyone's Ravelry projects, it looks good on literally everyone, like fits so well. Not like a yoke sweater where sometimes it looks good on some people and sometimes it looks bad. This one I feel like looks good on everyone. So if you haven't tried out a set-in sleeve pattern, doesn't have to be this one, but I recommend trying one out because the fit is like perfect and I kind of don't want to do any other types of sleeves after this. So when I was splitting for sleeves and continuing with the body, I decided that the 44-inch final circumference was going to be too much for my waist because that was going to give me a positive ease of 14 inches. So I didn't want it to be that oversized. So what I did was, you know, when you split for sleeves, you cast on some stitches for the underarm. So I cast on about half of what they asked, and what they asked was a lot. It was like on the order of magnitude of like maybe between 30 and 40 stitches. So I just did half of that, and I really like where that is getting me. I haven't calculated how much positive ease I'm getting now, because I still have the button bands and stuff to do, but it's when I try it on and pretend I know where the button bands are, then it's looking really good. And then I guess when I did the sleeves, I must have picked up less there as well, but it's still a really generous sleeve. Sometimes I find sleeves too tight and I have to cast on more, but this was perfectly fine for me, just doing half the amount that the pattern said, just for the cast on underarm sleeve. So maybe 17 stitches or something like that instead of 30 something. I don't really want to give away the pattern. And let's see. Okay, so yeah, I knit the body the full length that it said, but I mean, you can just keep doing pattern repeats as much as you want. And in her example, she had done one final repeat of this. And I thought, when I ended here, I thought it looked a little bit incomplete. So I also decided to do that final one. And I think that really completes the whole look of having that little bit of red down there. I think that looks great. And then I did, I don't know, some 2.5 inches of ribbing. I think I did a little bit less. There was like a range. She said you can do the ribbing between this many inches and that many inches. And I did on the lower end since I had already added this extra repeat, and my torso is it's like an inch shorter than like the standard when I'm making sewing patterns and stuff like that. So I thought this was hitting me at a great spot, and then I bound off this using Italian bind off, and that's laying really well. Oh my gosh, the ribbing also took forever because I was on 2mm needles, but what can you do? This is a labor of love. So then after I finished the body, then I went to the sleeves, and the sleeve is fully charted, and you make decreases every certain amount of rows. And I have pretty long arms. I usually have to knit my sleeves 2 or 3 inches more than what the pattern says. So I decided to skip every other decrease row because I had to knit the sleeve longer, and I didn't want to reach the final sleeve circumference and then have the sleeve just end here. So by doing the decreases every other time it told me to, then it was a more gradual decrease by the time I got to the length I actually needed. Hope that makes sense. And then I just did the exact same 1x1 ribbing on 2mm needles for this sleeve. And here you can see this yarn has barely any stitch definition, but that's fine because then you can see the beautiful tweedy effects. Then after I did that sleeve, I thought before doing the other sleeve, it's time to do something a little bit different, and then that's when I did the button band, which I already talked about a little bit. But one thing I wanted to mention is this was picking up like between 150 and 200 stitches, and I find the easiest way to pick up stitches, especially on like a fingering weight yarn or something, is with a crochet hook. So I just pick like any crochet hook. I'm not too fussed about what size it is, just like kind of close to whatever the knitting needle is. And then I'll pick up like 10 stitches on the crochet hook and then push them down to the tail end and then slip those onto the knitting needle when there becomes too many on the crochet hook, and then I just repeat it like that. And I find having a hook is so good when you need to pick up stitches or do anything like that. And speaking of hooks and weaving in ends, what my strategy for weaving in ends, because there are definitely a lot here. Well, first of all, if there's a steek, just put all your ends in the steek, because that part's just going to get cut off anyways. So that gets rid of all the body steek problems right there. But for all the other ends, what I like to do is at the end of the night, and I'm too tired to knit another round, but I still want to make progress on my project, that is when I find is the best time to weave in ends. And what I like to do is get a little latch hook tool, and that actually came with my knitting machine, but I'm sure you can find these anywhere. And that is such a faster way than threading a needle and going doot doot doot, because I try to make my ends really short, like just an inch, especially with wool. I've never had them pop out in a weird spot. Maybe with cotton yarn, you'd have to make your tails a little bit longer to make sure they won't pop out, but I make my tails really short when I'm working with wool. And you can't even thread a needle with yarn that short, so I find the latch hook tool to be perfect for that. So yeah, all I have to do is finish this sleeve. Maybe I'm halfway done. I think this is going to take me another week. The first sleeve took me like 9 or 10 days, and then the button band took me 3 days, and I didn't even put buttonholes in that. So I still have to do the buttonhole band and finish the sleeve. So maybe another 2 weeks, and then I'll finally be able to wear this. Not finally, it's only been like 2 months, but this has been a very, very time-consuming project, but I'm not even bored of it because it just looks so incredible, and the yarn is a delight to work with, and the pattern is amazing. I had no problems any step of the way. So I'm definitely gonna make this again in like the reverse colorway, like light background, like that would be really good for spring and summer. This would be good for winter and fall maybe, but I think it's fine. I'm definitely gonna wear this. And since it's a fingering weight yarn, it's a little bit on the lighter side. I guess it's not that light, but it'll be good for spring mornings and summer nights even. And yeah, I just can't wait to wear this. Hopefully it'll be a finished object in my next episode. Okay, there's actually a couple things I forgot to mention in case you want a little bit shorter of a project. This pattern also comes in a vest version. And then I forgot this whole saga where I actually ran out of the dark brown yarn. So I don't know why, but I thought 200 grams of dark brown was gonna cut it for this whole sweater. I think I thought I had more, but when I finished my 4th ball, I went to go skein up another, and I discovered I was completely out of yarn, which is like, must be everyone's worst nightmare. And since I got this quite a while ago, like the yarn company is in Scotland, and I had it shipped here, and I was basically just panicking because when I've used this yarn in the past, they've actually run out and been sold out of the yarn. And then also I didn't want to have to pay for shipping and duties on top of that. But okay, so I went to the website, and first of all, it was still in stock. So I was like, phew, okay. And then I basically just had to bite the bullet and pay for shipping and duties all over again because what was I gonna do, just not finish this beautiful project? I had to get 2 more balls, so it's gonna take 6 balls of, and it comes in 50 grams, so I guess 300 grams of this fingering weight yarn. And I'm just thankful they didn't run out, because this tweed effect Scottish merino I think is impossible to replace. And yeah, just would have been a nightmare. So that is my exciting yarn story about how I was stupid about yarn and not checking again. If you've seen some of my other episodes, maybe you've noticed I do run out of yarn a lot, or miscalculate, or something goes wrong. So I haven't learned my lesson yet. I guess I'm just a dumb human. Okay, the next project I'm going to be talking about is this beautiful little top in a very pale lavender or lilac kind of color that I think is perfect for spring. I can't remember the last time I wore purple. I think I was in high school and I had a long sleeve purple shirt. That's the last time I can remember wearing purple. It's not one of my favorite colors, but something about this very pale lilac color really spoke to me, and I thought it was gonna be perfect for spring. So this is called the Eloise top, and it's by Friday Knits. And I think she has a few patterns that have Bridgerton inspired names. So Eloise, I think, is one of the Bridgerton characters. And I think if you buy 3 of her Bridgerton patterns, you get some type of discount. But anyways, I thought this one looked really cute and I wanted to give it a shot. It's a little t-shirt pattern. There's no sleeves on mine yet, but I thought it was so cool how she played with the different textures. So this upper part here is knit in a silk mohair, and then down here for more coverage, you pair that silk mohair with a strand of fingering weight merino yarn. And in her sample, she used some drops yarn, so drops kid silk mohair and then the drops merino. But for mine, I find the drops mohair to be the itchiest mohair, so I went with a Knitting for Olive silk mohair. And this is in the color Unicorn Purple. And then for the merino, I chose a very soft but durable merino by Pasquale. And this is their color Crocus. So here you can see the 2 different shades of purple, and they look pretty different on camera and in real life, but the mohair is a little bit more vibrant. But I don't know, hopefully you can see that the final resulting fabric looks nice, and you know, not too much of a difference between the mohair and then the mohair held with the merino. So this also has a beautiful keyhole back. I think there's going to be some kind of button here later, but for now, like when I'm trying it on, I just hold this keyhole together with a little stitch marker. And then I'm a couple inches past where I joined the front and the back to knit in the round, so it's all easy peasy right now. But how it all started was you start the back panel down here and you work your way up and then work separately the left and right panels to create this keyhole feature here. And one thing you might notice, the original pattern has these cute little baubles all over the place. And I did like 2 rows. Hold on, let me take her off. I did 2 rows of the baubles, and then I decided there's no way I'm gonna do this. It'll take probably 5 times longer. So I just kept those initial bauble rows as is, and then just continued in the plain mohair. And I thought I didn't feel like frogging, so I just left those baubles in, and I think it's fine. You kind of can't see from back here, but that doesn't bother me at all. Maybe I can pooch those baubles to the wrong side or something like that. And then I think you start with a provisional cast on. So then later, when you're done with all the mohair only sections, you pick up these stitches and then start knitting the 2 strands downward like this. I think the provisional cast on was onto some scrap yarn, but I really didn't like picking up the mohair with the scrap yarn, so I'm not going to make this again. But if I do have to do a provisional cast on with mohair, I'll probably just cast on directly onto a second needle. That way when I go to knit the rest of it, it's already on the needles and I don't have to worry about that. But if you're going to use the scrap yarn, make sure it's not a woolly yarn, and make sure it's thicker, like much thicker than the mohair. So I used like a worsted weight cotton or something. So it was not too bad to pick up from that, but I could imagine if you were to use a fingering weight wool or something, the mohair would really stick to that, and it'd probably be a lot harder to pick up those stitches. And then for the front, I don't really remember actually, but the front and back are seamless. So maybe I think you just continue knitting from this back panel into the front, and then probably cast on some stitches here at the center front. Then you knit down to here, and then there's kind of like this bust cup shaping here, and that's done with short rows. So I don't know, it doesn't look that neat right now, but I'm gonna give this a nice steam block and hopefully it all works out. This mohair fabric is really stretchy, by the way. So if you're making this and it looks really small, don't worry. This can stretch like all the way out as far as you need it to go. And that's why this pattern is recommended to be knit with 0 to 2 inches of negative ease. And let me tell you a little bit more about the specs of the pattern. So her version was made on 3.75 millimeter needles, but I didn't have that. Sorry. So I just went up to a 4 and I could meet gauge because you can just stretch, like you can just make this whatever gauge you need kind of. So 4 millimeters for that. And the gauge is 22 stitches. And let's see, it comes in 8 sizes and the sizes range between a 28-inch circumference and a 56-inch circumference. And I am making the 3rd size, which is supposed to give me 1 inch of negative ease. So we'll see how that works out. This mannequin is like, it's a little bit bigger than my measurements and it can fit over that. So that's a good sign. I just don't want it to be too small. I think I can always adjust something that's too big. So back to these short rows. So I was looking at some of the other projects on Ravelry and I was getting a little scared that this whole section was gonna start too low, which would be a little bit indecent. So to make sure it started high enough, I started the short rows an inch before it told me to. And then I think what you're supposed to do is join the front and back at the same time that you start the short rows. So that means the top of this bust cup thing is going to be in line with wherever you have your underarm seam type of thing. So since I did this an inch earlier, I did not join the front and the back. I just did all the short rows, and then once it was an inch longer here, that's when I joined the front and the back. So this whole armpit area is still at wherever it was supposed to be in the pattern. It's just that I started the short rows an inch earlier than it said, so that it wouldn't wind up like this. So hopefully this gives enough coverage. We'll see how that goes. I'm thinking how to fix it if there's a worst case scenario. I was thinking maybe I could take the strand of merino yarn and do duplicate stitch on these little mohair stitches to kind of fill in this see-through area. So that's one possible solution. I'm not sure that's gonna look that good, but we'll just have to see when we get there. It's also really hard to try it on at this point because since there are no sleeves, this section kind of wants to go in like this, but those sleeves are what's gonna really make this shoulder area here sit nice and good out to the side. And I also picked this pattern because it has like a set-in sleeve type of design, which I'm really into right now. And yeah, maybe I should put this on pause. Maybe I should put the body on pause. Maybe do a little bit more, maybe another inch or so I can get a nice feel for how it's gonna lay, and then work on those sleeves because I think the fit is really gonna come together after I've completed the sleeves. But so far so good, and oh my gosh, this fabric is so luxurious. I don't often knit with like a soft merino, so working with this is such a pleasure. And if you're stressed out at all, a project like this will just instantly make you feel better. I think it's just so delightful. And then maybe I need to make a mohair sweater in the future because it is so light but like cozy and comforting. And yeah, my girls really like to touch this, so I'm gonna have to make them. Well, one of them thinks this is too itchy, but I'm gonna have to maybe splurge on the Esair mohair, which is the softest one that I've tried, and maybe make them something in this type of thing. A little child mohair sweater would be so cute. And yeah, I really like working with the mohair on the larger 4mm needles. For the first couple of rows, I thought it was really awkward to have such a little thin strand on those bigger needles. But after just maybe 20 or 30 minutes, I really got into it and I don't find it hard at all. I haven't really missed or dropped many stitches, although if you drop a stitch in mohair, it's definitely trickier to try to pick those up, but it does kind of stick in place because of all the little hairs. So it's not as hard to work with as I was expecting. And what else can I say about this? Oh, if you're looking for mohair alternatives to drops, there's, besides the Knitting for Olive, which is sometimes too itchy for me, it just depends on the color and maybe how dry my skin is. For example, if I'm fresh out of the shower and my skin is like hot and kind of not too dried out, then I find something like this to be itchy. But if my skin is cold and dry, I can wear like the Icelandic wool and it won't feel itchy to me at all. So that's just a little tip if sometimes you want something to not be itchy, maybe make sure you're not fresh out of the shower with nicely moisturized skin, and it might feel a little bit better, but I'm sure it just depends on the person. So I'm hoping to get away with, I just purchased 3 balls of the mohair and 2 balls of the merino. I'm hoping to get away with that. So yeah, we'll see, but I just love the color of this. I love how it feels. And it's gonna take a little bit more work to see if it's gonna fit me properly. So yeah, this is going really well. I'm very happy to work on this. This is the one I take with me on the go because it's just like stockinette in the round right now. And yeah, the pattern is well written. I can't remember anything that gave me a problem, so it must be good. And yeah, I will keep you updated on this. And oh my gosh, I really recommend this Pasquale merino. I heard about the brand Pasquale from Nicotina Knits, and she is a huge fan. So that's why I wanted to try this out, because it's super soft while also being tightly spun and durable. And Knitting for Olive merino is not soft enough. And for a spring knit, I did want it to be a little bit on the softer side, because then it will just be less itchy even when my skin is feeling warm. So can't wait to try more of their yarns. They have one yarn that might be good for summer called Pinta, and it's a blend of maybe 3 different things. I can't remember exactly what it is right now, but I kind of want to try that for maybe a summer knit in the future. So we'll see about that. And then the next thing I'll talk about is a project that I wanted to do that would be kind of a little cropped sweater, a white cropped sweater that I could throw on over a t-shirt or a dress that doesn't have sleeves, just something that would be a little bit on the lighter side. And I also wanted to experiment with the combination of using silk plus a silk mohair. So I got some balls of Knitting for Olive pure silk. It's like a light fingering weight yarn, and then also their silk mohair. And I knit up a little swatch like this, and I really liked how the fabric felt and looked. Has a little bit of fuzziness, but it's very light and drapey from the silk and very, very soft. So I thought I did a couple swatches actually, and I discovered I wanted my fabric to be at with a 3mm needle for like kind of a tighter gauge, although I'm sure it'd be even softer if I knit it in a slightly larger needle size. So then the pattern I picked for this project idea is called the Amoretta Blouse, and actually this is multiple patterns in one. So you can make a t-shirt, you can make a long sleeve version, you could have it as a cardigan or a closed front top, just like a regular t-shirt top. And I picked this one because it had a beautiful V-shaped neckline, and I thought it would look great as a cropped cardigan. And it also has that famous set-in sleeve design that I'm really into right now. So I chose to make a cropped long sleeve version, and I already finished it. So I did a combination of hand knitting and machine knitting for this, and then there's even a little crochet trim. So let me show you a little bit closer what the finished fabric is looking like. So at the very end you do that little scalloped trim, and then it has a double knit button band, and I just picked some matching white buttons. And then how I started this was I did this whole top down in hand knitting before I split for sleeves, and then the rest I did on the machine in pieces. So first of all, I went down to a 3mm needle, and I think her original pattern was on a 3.75 in in the yarn Biche 8 Bouche Les Petites Lambs wool again. That's kind of weird. This 2 projects I'm doing that were originally, that were originally in that yarn. So since I went down, my gauge was much tighter. So the pattern gauge is 22 stitches, and with the 3mm needles, I had a 26 stitch gauge. So I went up from my usual size 3, which if I was knitting in the correct gauge, I was gonna have to knit a size 3. So I went up to a size 5 to meet my measurements in my new gauge. And then for the row gauge, since my row gauge was gonna be off due to my smaller needles, I just ignore all of the row gauges and just try it on a bunch of times to make sure I'm meeting the armhole depth and all that stuff. This pattern is definitely not the best. I would give it like a 3 or 2 out of 5 because some things were not as clear as it could be. I mean, I did get there in the end, so how bad could it be? But if I was a beginner knitter, I think there'd be some problems for sure. But I also wouldn't have tried to mess with the gauge and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe a 3 out of 5. So one of my major issues is that there are no measurements given for like the armhole depth. So if your row gauge is off, how are you supposed to know how long to knit something before you split for sleeves, for example? And then the instructions for the button band, like casting on in double knitting, was very unclear. So I just always go to YouTube when I have a problem like that, and then someone else will teach me it properly. And then the instructions for the crochet trim were also really bad. I just went on YouTube and did scallop, like search for crochet scallop trim and just did that. And then one of the other reviews on Ravelry said the instructions for one of the other finishing ribs was also super unclear. So just be careful that all the trim, the instructions for the trim or ribbing might be really bad if you're gonna attempt this pattern. Also, I think my last button is a little bit off, like it's puckering a little bit here. And then I think maybe I should have done some short row shaping, because right now this is pretty much how it lays on myself, like a little, I mean, it's kind of fine. If it was not cropped, this would be a perfect amount of ease, but since it is cropped, I kind of want it to have like 0 ease like this, and then this button band thing might lay a little bit better. So since I did seam this up at the sides, because I knit the whole bottom half on the knitting machine, I could undo this side seam and just kind of take it in a little bit like this. And I might do that, but I think I'll probably wear it as is and see if it bothers me. And I'm planning to wear this pretty much always buttoned up here. So you knit the front, the left, the 2 fronts separately, and then the whole back is like a nice big panel. And I did that on double pointed needles because that's my favorite type of needle to use, as long as all the stitches can fit all scrunched in on the double pointed needles. And then when I was gonna split for sleeves, I of course made a swatch on the knitting machine, and I decided I was gonna use tension 9, and 10 is like the largest. I think maybe I should have used the 10, but I think it's fine. You can't really tell like where I switched exactly. And then I put the left front, I knit the left front on the knitting machine, the right front, and then the back, and then seamed all those up together. But before I did that, I knit the sleeves, because once you seam it up, then you can't really put the sleeve flat on the machine, if you know what I mean. I decided to make this a bracelet length cardigan, like, or 3/4 sleeve, I don't know what you call that, but I didn't want it to be full sleeve since this is going to be for a little bit warmer weather. And then I just calculated based on my swatch where I wanted it to land, and I wanted to land right at my natural waist, or maybe a teeny bit below with the little crochet trim. And all of that went pretty smoothly. The only problem was I wound up having like 3 different shades of white mohair. And I didn't realize it until I had started knitting this all together, and you actually can't really tell in person anymore, I think. Because after I blocked it, all the mohair started fuzzing out and kind of blurring all those different shades of white that were going on. But I was just trying to use up my scrap knitting for olive white mohair, and I'm pretty sure I had a discontinued color in there called off-white. And then I had purchased one more ball of cream, and then something else in my stash might have been the color Snowflake. So yeah, I really messed up there, but I think it's kind of fine in the end. Yeah, I don't think you can really tell. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's actually a huge line right here you can see. But I think it's fine. It's not that noticeable. And for the crochet, what did I do? Okay, you have to do the button band before the crochet trim. But for that, the scallop trim is pretty simple. Like if you don't know how to crochet, I think you could probably do it, especially with all the great YouTube tutorials there are out there. And yeah, my only grievance is how this is puckering at the front. And this is after I've steam blocked it. So I think, yeah, I think I might need to take that in a little bit so it lays flat. But we'll see. But I like how it's white because it's gonna go with anything I'm wearing. That's why I picked it. And yeah, I think overall this was a success, and it was fun to challenge myself to combine hand knitting with machine knitting. And there's even some crochet in there. So definitely a fun pattern, super soft fabric. I would do this again, the silk plus a silk mohair. I think it's really light and drapey, a little bit less hot than a merino plus a mohair. And yeah, I like how the pure silk is like kind of shining through the fuzziness. I think it gives a really nice look. Okay, after looking at my notes, there's a bunch of stuff I forgot to mention. So right before I was splitting for the sleeves, I was counting up my stitches, like how many stitches are in the sleeve, how many are in the fronts and the back, and almost all the sections were off by 4 to 6 stitches. So I guess I messed up. I'm assuming it's not a mistake with the pattern, but I guess it could have been, but I'm sure it was probably me. So to reconcile it, I did it all in one row and just put increases wherever I needed to. And I didn't really calculate too carefully. I just like kind of put them in where I visually thought was like a nice interval. But then there was a major problem with the sleeves, and I didn't really see anyone talking about this on Ravelry. I think I only saw 1 or 2 people say that the sleeves were way too tight. So when I was about to split for the sleeves, or no, before I was gonna split for the sleeves, I calculated how many stitches was the sleeve gonna be, and therefore how many inches was the arm circumference gonna be. And I calculated that it was gonna be 2 inches too small for my arm. So then I calculated that I needed to add 24 stitches to the sleeve over the course of 8 rows, because by the time I was checking all this, I only had 8 more rows to go before splitting for sleeves. So I did just jam all those 24 increases in probably 1.5 inches. And I think it totally worked. Like you can't see anything weird going on with the sleeve. So that was a little bit crazy, but it worked out. And I think I cast on even more stitches than required for the underarm, because the worst thing in the world is a sleeve that's too tight. I can always work with a sleeve that's too loose, but yeah, definitely not too tight. And then there are some decreases as you're going towards the end of the sleeve, which I think gives a nice shape. And yeah, so that was one major obstacle that I faced due to my own, like I also changed which size I was making, so maybe it has something to do with that. But then also, wait, there was one more thing. No, I think that's it. It's just, yeah, it was also tricky because there's no arm depth given for when you split for sleeves. So I just had to try it on a whole bunch of times and make sure that was gonna work out. And also for the size 5, which I made, there are a bunch of extra sleeve increases and bust increase sections, and I did all of those. Like whenever it was like there were more rows for certain sizes, I always did all those rows because I figured I wasn't gonna meet row gauge, so I better just do even more rows to get to the sleeve armpit depth thing. Because of all the problems I had, like the no measurements given for the arm depth, the really poor instructions for the scalloped edge, the button band, and the other trimmings were not that clear. But if you're like intermediate and you want to deal with all of that and knit this pattern, then I think the overall look is nice. Like I really like this set-in sleeve. Just make sure you're trying it on a lot as you go to make sure you get the fit that you want. So that's all I have to talk about today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you liked today's episode. Consider liking and subscribing if you want. And I always like to hear where in the world you're from if you're a new viewer. Let me know, and I will see you here again next time. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!